Pick anything you want, Rancher said, until his daughter said, "We want that Apache woman as our mom." The sun rose gently over the wide-open plains, casting a warm golden light across the Whitaker Ranch. The land stretched endlessly, dotted with green pastures, sturdy fences, and the occasional grove of trees swaying in the morning breeze. John Whitaker, a tall, strong man with hands weathered from years of hard work, stepped out of the modest farmhouse. He inhaled the fresh air, taking in the familiar sounds of his morning routine. The lowing of the cows, the neighing of horses in the corral, and the soft cooing of doves perched on the wooden fence. Life on the ranch had always been quiet, almost predictable, but it carried a comforting rhythm that John had grown to cherish. John's life was not without its hardships. Years ago, he had lost his beloved wife, leaving him alone to care for their two young daughters, Emily and Sarah. The girls were a lively pair full of energy, curiosity, and a deep affection for their father. Despite the sorrow that still lingered in his heart, John dedicated himself to raising them with love and care, teaching them the skills needed to live on the ranch while also allowing them the freedom to explore and dream. Emily, the older of the two, was 10 years old. She had her mother's soft brown eyes and a mind that seemed to notice every detail of the world around her. Sarah, 8 years old, had a fiery spirit that could not be contained, and a laugh that could brighten even the most difficult day. The girls had grown up in the wide-open spaces of the ranch, running through the fields, climbing trees and chasing after the horses whenever they could. They loved their home dearly, but they also felt the absence of their mother in countless small ways. A missing warmth at the dinner table, an empty chair by the fireplace, and stories of bedtime comfort that only she could provide. Despite the emptiness left by their mother, the Whitaker Ranch was full of life and activity. John worked tirelessly from dawn until dusk, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and ensuring that the crops and fields were in good condition. The girls often helped him, though their main contribution was more enthusiasm than skill. They loved to follow him around, carrying small buckets for the animals, gathering eggs from the chicken coop, and asking endless questions about the world they saw. John found joy in their curiosity, even when it tested his patience, and he always answered their questions as best as he could, drawing on his experiences and the lessons life had taught him. One sunny morning, as John was checking the fences and the girls were playing nearby with a wooden hoop and stick, Emily suddenly ran up to him, her face lit with excitement. "Papa! Papa!" she called, tugging at his sleeve. "We've been talking, and we want to ask you something." John wiped the sweat from his brow and smiled down at her. "All right, my little whirlwind." "What is it?" he asked, crouching slightly to meet her gaze. Sarah, not wanting to be left out, bounced up beside Emily, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. "We want you to pick something for us," Emily said, her eyes sparkling. "Something really, really big." John raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Something really big, huh? Like what?" The girls exchanged a mischievous glance. "Anything we want," Sarah chimed in. "Anything at all." John chuckled and shook his head, realizing that his daughters had inherited his sense of wonder but perhaps not his understanding of how the world worked. "Anything you want?" he repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Then, with a laugh, he said, "All right, girls. Anything you want, I'll do my best to make it happen." The girls squealed with delight, hugging him tightly. They ran off to the fields, plotting their ideas in whispers and giggles. John watched them go, a smile lingering on his face. He didn't yet realize that their innocent promise would lead to something he could never have imagined. As the days passed, the girls continued their secret planning. They roamed the ranch and the surrounding woods, searching for inspiration. They watched the birds, the rabbits, and the deer, but nothing seemed quite big enough for their grand request. It was during one of these explorations that they stumbled upon something extraordinary. Beyond the creek that ran along the edge of the property, they discovered a small clearing where the trees formed a natural circle. There they met Nokomis, an Apache woman known in the region for her wisdom and knowledge of the land. She was strong yet gentle, her presence commanding attention without the need for words. She wore simple clothing made from soft, durable materials, and her long, dark hair was braided neatly down her back. The girls watched her from behind a tree, fascinated by the way she moved, tending to a small garden she had cultivated with care. Nokomis noticed the girls peeking and smiled warmly. "Hello, little ones," she said softly. "Don't be afraid. Come closer if you wish." Emily and Sarah, normally shy around strangers, felt an immediate sense of trust and wonder. They stepped forward and introduced themselves, explaining that they lived on the ranch nearby. Nokomis listened patiently, asking questions about the girls, the ranch, and their lives. She shared stories of the land, teaching them the names of plants and animals, and explaining how to use herbs to heal minor cuts or soothe a fever. The girls were captivated. They spent hours with Nokomis, learning, laughing, and exploring the clearing. They returned home each evening with their heads full of stories and their hearts full of admiration. They couldn't stop talking about Nokomis, recounting her lessons and the kindness she showed them. It wasn't long before a bold idea formed in their young minds. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in the farmhouse, Emily turned to her sister. "Sarah," she whispered, "I know what we should ask Papa for." "What? Tell me!" Emily took a deep breath. "We should ask him for Nokomis. We should ask him to make her our mom." Sarah's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Yes, yes. She's perfect. She's kind. And she knows everything. And she makes us so happy." The next morning, the girls approached their father, holding hands and standing bravely before him. "Papa," Emily began, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and nerves, "we've thought about what we want you to pick for us, and we've decided." John looked at them curiously. "Yes," he prompted, sensing that this was something unusual. "We want Nokomis to be our mom," Sarah said boldly, her voice filled with conviction. John blinked. For a moment, he was completely silent, staring at his daughters in disbelief. His mind raced, trying to comprehend what he had just heard. He had promised them anything, but he had never imagined they would choose a woman from outside their world, someone unfamiliar and from a different culture, to fill the place of their mother. The room felt suddenly heavy with the weight of the request. John's heart ached in a new way, not with anger or frustration, but with a mixture of surprise, uncertainty, and something he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear of the unknown. Could he really welcome Nokomis into their home? Could she adapt to ranch life? How would the community react? And most importantly, how would he navigate his own feelings about losing his wife while potentially embracing another woman as a mother to his daughters? The girls, sensing his hesitation, reached out to him. "Please, Papa," Emily said softly, her eyes wide and pleading. "We love her. She makes us happy. That's all we want." John looked into their innocent, hopeful faces and felt a lump rise in his throat. Their happiness had always been his priority, and now it stood before him in a way he could neither ignore nor fully understand. That evening, John sat alone on the porch after the girls had gone to bed, watching the sun set over the wide plains. The sky was painted in brilliant hues of orange and pink, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. He thought about the promise he had made, the life he had lived, and the family he wanted to create. Though he did not yet have an answer, he felt a stirring of something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Perhaps life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. And perhaps, just perhaps, the girl's choice could bring a new kind of joy to their ranch and to his own heart. And so, the stage was set. The promise had been made, the desire expressed, and the story of the Whitaker family, Nokomis, and the girl's extraordinary wish was only beginning to unfold. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting a gentle glow across the Whitaker ranch. John Whitaker had spent a sleepless night thinking about his daughter's bold request. Nokomis, the Apache woman they wished to be their mother, was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her life, her traditions, and even her presence in the nearby woods made John feel both curious and cautious. He had promised his daughters anything they wanted, but he had not anticipated the depth of their choice. Despite his uncertainty, John knew one thing for sure: the girls were happy. Every time they spoke about Nokomis, their eyes sparkled, their laughter was brighter, and their footsteps seemed lighter. That happiness tugged at John's heart. He realized that perhaps this meeting, however unconventional it might be, was something he could not avoid. After breakfast, the girls rushed out of the farmhouse, eager to visit Nokomis. John followed quietly, his boots crunching against the dirt path as he watched them disappear into the woods. The trees were tall and close, their leaves forming a natural canopy that filtered the sunlight into patches of gold. The air smelled of wildflowers and damp earth, and the soft sound of the creek nearby added a peaceful melody to the morning. When they reached the clearing, Nokomis was already there, tending to her small garden. The rows of vegetables and herbs were neat and thriving, a testament to her care and knowledge of the land. She looked up as the girls approached, her face lighting up with a welcoming smile. "Good morning, little ones," Nokomis said in a voice that was gentle but full of confidence. "I see you have come again. What brings you here today?"
Emily and Sarah exchanged excited glances. We want to talk to you," Emily said nervously.
"About something important," Nokomis nodded, her dark eyes warm and understanding. "I see. Sit with me and tell me what is on your minds." The girls lowered themselves onto the soft grass, their legs crossed, and began to explain everything: the promise from their father, their desire for Nokomis to be their mother, and how she had taught them so much already. Nokomis listened carefully, never interrupting, her expression calm and thoughtful. When the girls finished, she remained silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady but kind. "I am honored by your trust and your words," she said. "But you must understand, being a mother is not only about teaching or playing. It is about love, patience, guidance, and sometimes making difficult choices. It is a responsibility that cannot be taken lightly." The girls nodded eagerly, their determination shining through. "We understand," Sarah said. "We just want you to be with us. We love you, Nokomis." She could see the sincerity in the girls' hearts. They were not asking out of curiosity or fleeting admiration. They genuinely cared for her and felt a deep connection. She knew that accepting their request would not be easy. It would require courage, compromise, and the willingness to step into a world very different from her own. But she also felt a spark of warmth for the children who had already become a part of her life. Meanwhile, John watched from the edge of the clearing, hidden behind a tree. He felt a mix of emotions: pride in his daughters for speaking their hearts, fear of the unknown, and curiosity about Nokomis herself. She seemed strong yet gentle, wise yet approachable. He saw the way she treated his daughters with respect and care, and he wondered if perhaps she truly could bring the love and guidance that had been missing in their home. After a long pause, Nokomis rose and walked toward John. She greeted him with a respectful nod. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "I have spoken with your daughters. They have asked something extraordinary." John swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. "Yes," he admitted quietly. They want you to be their mother." Nokomis studied him for a moment, sensing his hesitation. "I understand this is unusual," she said, "and I will not force myself upon you or your family. But I also believe that children have the right to their happiness. If you are willing to consider it, I will come to your home and see what life with your family could be like. But know that it is a choice that must be made with thought and care by all of us." John nodded slowly. He felt the first glimmer of acceptance stirring within him. He knew that this was not a decision to be rushed. He also knew that his daughter's happiness mattered more than anything else in the world. "Very well," he said finally. "Let us take our time and see how things unfold, but we must be honest with one another every step of the way." Over the next few weeks, Nokomis began visiting the ranch regularly. She would arrive early in the morning carrying baskets of herbs, roots, and fresh vegetables she had gathered. She taught Emily and Sarah to identify plants, prepare remedies for minor ailments, and respect the animals on the ranch. She also shared stories of her people, telling tales of bravery, wisdom, and connection to the land. The girls were captivated, listening intently to every word, and practicing her lessons eagerly. John observed these visits carefully, At first, he focused on the practical aspects, how Nokomis adapted to ranch life, how she interacted with the animals, and how she respected the boundaries of their land. But gradually, he began to notice something more profound. His daughters were happier, calmer, and more confident than they had been in years. Their laughter filled the air, and their curiosity about the world seemed to grow daily. One afternoon, John approached Nokomis as she showed the girls how to make a simple herbal salve for scrapes and cuts. "You have a gift," he said quietly, watching her hands move with precision and care. "Not just with the girls, but with the land, the animals, everything you touch."
"It is simply the way I have learned to live," she replied. "And your daughters are eager to learn."
"They have opened their hearts to me, and I have opened mine to them. That is how we grow together." John felt a strange warmth in his chest. He realized that the lessons Nokomis was teaching were not only practical, but also emotional and moral. She was helping his daughters grow into thoughtful, capable young girls. And in doing so, she was teaching him too, about patience, trust, and the importance of following the heart, even when it leads into unfamiliar territory. Despite the progress, there were still moments of doubt. John worried about the opinions of the neighbors and the wider community. He worried about the challenges of integrating someone from a different culture into his household. But every time he watched Emily and Sarah laugh with Nokomis, he felt those worries diminish. Their happiness was undeniable, and it was slowly breaking down the walls of fear and uncertainty that had long held him back. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the family sat together on the porch. Emily and Sarah were chattering excitedly about the day's lessons. While Nokomis listened with a quiet smile, John leaned back in his chair, taking in the scene. The laughter of the girls, the gentle presence of Nokomis, and the peace of the ranch filled him with a sense of possibility he had not felt in years.
"Papa," Emily said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence, Do you think Nokomis could really be our mom someday?" John looked at her, his heart full of both love and uncertainty. He did not answer immediately.
Instead, he watched Nokomis, who nodded gently at the girls, understanding their question without speaking. In that moment, John realized that this journey would take time, patience, and courage. But he also realized that the seeds of something beautiful had already been planted. Seeds of love, trust, and family that could grow stronger each day. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, John felt a quiet sense of hope. The path ahead was not clear, and there would surely be challenges. But the bond forming between his daughters and Nokomis was undeniable. He knew that whatever happened, their lives were about to change in ways that none of them could have imagined. And so, the Whitaker Ranch, once filled with quiet routine and a lingering sense of loss, began to hum with the promise of a new chapter. One of learning, growth, and the extraordinary possibility that a family could be chosen, not by convention, but by the heart. The days on the Whitaker Ranch had grown brighter with Nokomis's visits. Emily and Sarah eagerly awaited her arrival each morning, and the once quiet ranch now echoed with their laughter and questions. Nokomis had become a teacher, a guide, and a friend to the girls, and though John watched closely, he still wrestled with a mix of admiration and unease. He could see the positive impact she had on his daughters, yet the idea of her becoming part of their family was still foreign, even unsettling to him. John was a man of habits, a man used to routine and tradition. The ranch had always been his world, where the rules were clear and life moved predictably. Now this woman from a different culture, with her knowledge of herbs, her stories of her people, and her quiet strength, was slowly weaving herself into the fabric of their daily lives. It was a challenge to his understanding of family, society, and even himself. One afternoon, John decided to speak with Nokomis alone. The girls had wandered into the orchard to pick apples, leaving the two adults alone by the creek. The sun was warm, and the soft rustle of leaves created a peaceful background as John cleared his throat. "Nokomis," he began cautiously, "I need to talk to you about everything. About my daughter's request and about you coming into our home." Nokomis nodded, listening patiently. "I understand," she said. "And I want you to know that I will not force anything. This must be a choice made by all of us, with honesty and care. John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his own emotions.
I see how much the girls adore you,
He admitted. I see how you've taught them, guided them, helped them grow. But I am afraid. Afraid of what people will think. Afraid of whether we can truly live together, whether you can adapt to life here, and whether I can accept this change in my own heart. Nokomis's eyes softened, filled with understanding. Fear is natural, she said. Stepping into something new is never easy, but love is stronger than fear. Your daughter's happiness is a reflection of their hearts, and that happiness cannot be ignored. If we approach this with patience, respect, and care, we can find a way forward together. John looked at her, studying the calm strength in her presence. He realized that she was not only wise but also compassionate, capable of bridging the gap between two very different worlds. Yet, he knew that words alone would not be enough. There would be tests, moments of doubt, and challenges that could not be predicted. The first challenge came sooner than expected. When Nokomis visited the ranch the following week, some of the neighbors had gathered near the fence, whispering and pointing. News of her visits had spread, and the murmurs of disapproval reached John's ears even before he saw them.
Papa, why are they whispering about Nokomis?
Emily asked, her small hand gripping his sleeve. John knelt beside her, forcing a calm smile. Sometimes people are afraid of what they do not understand, he said. They may not know her, so they judge without seeing who she truly is. Sarah frowned. But she's kind, Papa. She helps us. She teaches us. She's good.
I know, my loves,
John said softly, and that is what matters most. But sometimes being kind is not enough for others to understand. Despite his reassurances, John felt the weight of the community's judgment pressing on him. It was one thing to accept Nokomis for the sake of his daughters, but it was another to face the scrutiny of the town, the neighbors, and even distant relatives who might question his decisions. Nokomis, however, did not waver. She continued her visits with quiet determination, never raising her voice or responding to the whispers. She focused on the girls, teaching them to respect the land, to care for the animals. She shared stories of her people's traditions, explaining the values of respect, patience, and balance with the earth. The girls, inspired by her lessons, began to notice changes in themselves as well. Emily became more observant, noticing the small details in the plants, the animals, and the weather. Sarah grew more patient, learning to listen and reflect before acting impulsively. The influence of Nokomis was shaping not only their knowledge, but also their character, and John could not deny the positive transformation. Yet, John's struggles were far from over. He found himself questioning his own feelings more deeply. Was he ready to accept Nokomis as a part of their family? Could he trust himself to let go of the past and embrace a new future? And could he reconcile his love for his late wife with the possibility of welcoming another woman into their lives? One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, John and Nokomis sat by the fire outside the farmhouse. The stars shimmered above, and the cool night air carried the scent of sage and freshly cut hay. "Nokomis," John began, his voice quiet, "I see how you care for the girls. I see how much they love you. And I see how calm and strong you are. But I am still afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of judgment, and afraid of my own heart." Nokomis reached out and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Fear is natural," she said. "It shows that you care deeply. But love, true love, requires courage. It asks us to face our fears and choose what is right for those we hold dear. Your daughter's happiness depends on you seeing beyond fear, and you will not face this alone. We can walk this path together, slowly, carefully, and with respect for all that has come before." John nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Nokomis was not demanding or forcing anything. She was offering guidance, patience, and understanding. He realized that her strength was not in insisting on her place in their lives, but in giving him the space to come to the decision himself. The following weeks were a test of patience and trust. John observed Nokomis carefully, watching how she interacted with the ranch hands, the animals, and his daughters. He noted her quiet confidence, her deep knowledge of the land, and the gentle authority she carried without raising her voice. He also saw how the girls flourished under her care, how their curiosity and happiness seemed to grow each day. Slowly, John began to let go of his reservations. He started to see Nokomis not as an outsider, but as someone who could complement their family, someone whose presence brought warmth and balance to their lives. He began to engage more with her lessons, asking questions about the herbs she used, the stories she told, and the traditions she practiced. In doing so, he discovered a newfound respect and even admiration for her wisdom and resilience. One afternoon, as they worked together to repair a fence along the northern pasture, John finally spoke what had been in his heart for weeks. "Nokomis," he said, "I have been afraid, yes. But I also see now that my fear is nothing compared to the happiness you bring to Emily and Sarah. And I think it is time I set aside my doubts and consider what it would mean for all of us to live together, as a family." Nokomis paused, her hands resting on the wooden post. She looked at him, her expression calm but filled with warmth. "That is all I ask," she said. "No rush, no pressure. Just honesty and patience as we find our way." John smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of possibility and hope. He realized that the journey ahead would not be easy, but it would be worth every challenge. The girls' happiness, the harmony of the ranch, and the chance to embrace something extraordinary were reasons enough to try. Over the next few months, the bond between John and Nokomis grew stronger. They worked side by side, mending fences, tending to the animals, and sharing meals at the end of long days. They spoke openly about their fears, their hopes, and the lessons life had taught them. Nokomis showed John that family was not defined solely by tradition or blood, but by love, respect, and shared experiences. Emily and Sarah continued to thrive, their laughter filling the ranch with joy and energy. They reveled in the simple lessons of farm life, guided by Nokomis's gentle wisdom. They began to teach each other, practicing what they had learned, and sharing stories of their adventures in the fields and woods. John watched them, feeling a deep sense of pride and gratitude. For the first time, the Whitaker Ranch felt complete. It was a place where differences were celebrated, where love and learning went hand in hand, and where the past was honored even as the future unfolded in unexpected ways. John knew that challenges would come, as they always did in life, but he also knew that with patience, courage, and the guidance of Nokomis, they could face anything together. And so, the Whitaker family moved forward, step by step, learning to trust, to love, and to grow. John's heart, once heavy with fear and uncertainty, began to open. The girls, guided by their unwavering curiosity and affection, showed the way. And Nokomis, with her quiet strength and wisdom, became the bridge between the old and the new, teaching all of them that family is not only what is given to us, but what we choose to nurture and protect. The ranch, once a place of quiet routine, had become a living, breathing testament to courage, patience, and the extraordinary power of love. Spring had arrived at the Whitaker Ranch, bringing with it longer days, warmer sunlight, and the fresh scent of blooming wildflowers. The fields, once quiet and orderly, now buzzed with life. Emily and Sarah ran freely through the pastures, their laughter echoing across the hills, while John moved about the ranch with a quiet satisfaction that had been missing for years. The presence of Nokomis had slowly transformed their home, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Nokomis visited every day now, no longer just as a teacher or guide, but as a part of the family's daily rhythm. She carried baskets of herbs, fruits, and vegetables she had gathered or grown herself, and she brought stories, wisdom, and gentle guidance to the ranch. The girls' bond with her had deepened remarkably. They followed her instructions, learned her ways, and shared their own ideas in return. John watched from a distance at first, still unsure of how to fully integrate her into their lives. But with each passing day, he felt the warmth of their connection, and his doubts began to fade. One morning, John found Nokomis teaching the girls how to braid the long grasses by the creek. The girls' fingers moved clumsily at first, tangling and knotting, but Nokomis guided them with patience and encouragement. "Slowly," she said softly. "The grass will listen if your hands are calm." "I can't do it right!" she exclaimed, frustrated. Nokomis knelt beside her, placing her hands over Emily's.
Feel the rhythm, she instructed.
"Let your hands follow the pattern. Each strand has its own way of moving. Don't force it. Work with it." Sarah, who had been struggling as well, laughed. "It's like the grass is alive." Nokomis smiled. "It is alive. Everything in nature has its own spirit. If you respect it, it will respect you back." John watched silently, struck by the beauty of the lesson. Nokomis was not only teaching the girls practical skills but also instilling values of patience, respect, and harmony with the world around them. He realized that these lessons were shaping their hearts as much as their minds. Over time, John himself began to participate more fully in the lessons. Nokomis encouraged him to join the girls in small activities, teaching him about herbs that could be used for healing, how to read the signs of the weather, and even small traditions of her people. John found himself fascinated, seeing the ranch and the surrounding land in a new light. He began to understand Nokomis not as an outsider, but as a teacher, a guide, and potentially the heart of the family he had longed to rebuild. The community, initially skeptical of Nokomis's presence, slowly began to notice the changes on the Whitaker ranch. Neighbors whispered less as they saw how well the girls were learning and how the ranch was thriving. Some even came to ask Nokomis for advice on herbs or crops. Nokomis treated them all with quiet dignity, never flaunting her knowledge, only offering guidance when asked. Her patience and wisdom earned her respect, not only from the neighbors, but from the wider community. One afternoon, as the family sat together under the shade of a large oak tree, Emily and Sarah were busy sketching plants and making notes about the lessons they had learned from Nokomis. John sat nearby mending a fence, while Nokomis quietly observed, her hands resting in her lap. "Papa?" Emily asked, looking up. "Do you think Nokomis will stay with us forever?" John paused, considering the question. He looked at Nokomis, whose eyes were calm and full of understanding. I hope so," he replied finally. "She has become a part of our lives, and I can see how happy she makes all of us." "She's already like our mom." Nokomis smiled gently, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "I am honored by your words," she said softly. "But remember, being a family is not only about titles. It is about care, respect, and love. Every day we live together, we build the family we choose to be."
John felt a lump rise in his throat.
Her words, simple yet profound, struck a chord deep within him. For years, he had wondered if he could ever feel complete again, if his family could ever be whole. Now, with Nokomis and the girls together, he began to believe it was possible. Life on the ranch continued to flourish. Nokomis taught the girls to ride horses with skill and confidence, to identify edible plants, and to understand the ways of the animals around them. They learned how to mend fences, gather firewood, and prepare meals using fresh ingredients from both the ranch and Nokomis' knowledge of the land. John noticed that even the ranch hands began to show respect for Nokomis, appreciating her wisdom and her quiet strength. One evening after a long day of work, John found himself walking with Nokomis near the creek. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows over the fields. "Nokomis," he began, hesitant at first, "I have been thinking a lot about all of this, about you, the girls, and our family." Nokomis listened quietly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I see how much the girls have grown," John continued, "how much they have learned from you and how much joy they have found. And I realize that I have been holding back, worrying about what others think, about what is right or expected. But I see now that the right thing is what brings happiness and love to our lives." Nokomis placed a hand gently on his arm. "It is never easy to step beyond fear and expectation," she said. "But when we do, we open ourselves to life in its fullest form. You have already begun this journey, John. Trust yourself, and trust the bonds you have built with your daughters, and with me." John nodded, feeling a warmth and relief he had not known in years. He realized that the path ahead would require courage, patience, and understanding, but he also understood that the rewards, love, family, and harmony, were worth every challenge. The girls, unaware of the depth of the conversation, ran toward them laughing, their faces flushed with excitement. "Papa! Nokomis!" "Look at what we made!" Emily shouted, holding up a small woven basket of flowers and herbs. Sarah bounced beside her, adding, "We want to make a gift for you too, Papa, to show you how much we love you and Nokomis." John smiled, taking the girls in his arms one by one. Nokomis knelt beside them, helping to arrange the flowers and herbs into a simple but beautiful display. The family laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed the moment together, the bonds between them growing stronger with every passing day. Over the next several months, the ranch became a place of learning, joy, and shared experiences. Nokomis continued to teach the girls not only practical skills but also values of courage, respect, and compassion. John became more involved, seeing the ranch through fresh eyes, appreciating both its beauty and the love that filled it. Neighbors who once whispered began to visit, curious about the changes in the family and the ranch. They were met with warmth and guidance from Nokomis, who treated them with respect and kindness. The community gradually came to see that the Whitaker Ranch was thriving not just because of hard work, but because of the love, trust, and shared values that now defined the family. One evening, as the family gathered around the fire pit under a sky full of stars, Emily and Sarah snuggled close to Nokomis while John stoked the fire. The warmth of the flames mirrored the warmth in their hearts. Nokomis told stories of her people, of bravery and wisdom, of the importance of family and the earth. The girls listened intently, absorbing every word, while John reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them all together. For the first time in years, John felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The doubts, fears, and worries that had once weighed heavily on his heart were slowly giving way to hope, love, and trust. He realized that family was not defined by tradition or blood alone, but by the bonds we choose to nurture, the lessons we share, and the love we offer freely to one another. And so, the Whitaker Ranch, once a quiet place of routine and solitude, had become a home filled with laughter, learning, and love. Nokomis, once a stranger, had become the heart of their family. John, Emily, and Sarah had learned to embrace change, to trust in the goodness of others, and to see that happiness often comes from the most unexpected places. Together, they faced the future with courage, hope, and the knowledge that true family is built not only by what is given, but by what is chosen, nurtured, and cherished. The seasons on the Whitaker Ranch continued to change, each bringing new life, challenges, and joys. Summer arrived with long golden days, the air thick with the scent of blooming flowers, ripe fruit, and freshly cut hay. The ranch, once quiet and routine, now buzzed with laughter, learning, and activity. Emily and Sarah ran through the fields as freely as the wind, their joy infectious, while John moved about the ranch with a quiet sense of pride and satisfaction he had not felt in years. Nokomis had become more than a visitor or teacher. She was the heart of their home. Life had not always been easy. The process of blending their lives together required patience, compromise, and courage. There were still moments when John felt uncertainty creep in, or when neighbors' curious eyes made him uneasy. Yet, each challenge had been met with love, understanding, and perseverance. Nokomis taught the girls not only about nature, survival, and traditions, but also about values like respect, empathy, and courage. The girls in turn reminded John every day of the joy, innocence, and wonder that could still exist in life. One morning, John stood on the porch of the farmhouse, watching Nokomis and the girls in the orchard. Emily carefully balanced on a low branch of an apple tree, while Sarah held the basket, her eyes shining with delight as fruit fell safely into their hands. Nokomis moved between them, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. John could see the girls' confidence growing, the way they trusted themselves and one another, and he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the woman who had brought such light into their lives. He reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. He remembered the day the girls had first spoken of their wish, his fear of change, and the uncertainty he had felt at the thought of someone new becoming a part of their family. He thought about the quiet walks by the creek, the lessons about herbs and the land, and the countless evenings spent listening to Nokomis's stories beneath the stars. Each memory reminded him that love, trust, and patience were stronger than fear, and that family was built not by tradition alone, but by the choices of the heart. The girls had grown closer to Nokomis with each passing day, their bond deepening in ways that went beyond lessons or play. Emily admired her for her wisdom and calm strength, while Sarah cherished her courage and kindness. They saw in her not only a mother figure, but also a friend, a guide, and a source of inspiration. Nokomis in turn cherished the girls' curiosity, warmth, and unwavering love. She had come to care for them as if they were her own, and the thought of them brought her joy unlike anything she had known. John noticed the transformation not only in the girls, but in himself. He had begun to see life on the ranch in a new light, appreciating the small wonders of the land, the animals, and the rhythms of nature. He had learned patience, humility, and the power of listening. Nokomis had shown him that strength and love often came in quiet, steady forms, and that the bonds of family were reinforced not just by blood, but by trust, care, and shared experience. One afternoon, as the family worked together to prepare the fields for autumn planting, John finally spoke aloud the words he had carried in his heart for months. "Nokomis," he said, pausing to wipe the sweat from his brow, "I want you to know how grateful I am for everything you have done for us. The girls adore you, and I can see why. You have brought joy, knowledge, and love into our lives."
I want you to be part of this family, fully, if you are willing.
Nokomis looked at him, her dark eyes shining with warmth and understanding. She stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "I am already part of your family," she said softly. "I came into your lives to share what I could, and I found a home here. It is a choice we make together every day, through love, care, and respect. And I am willing to continue this journey with you all, as your family, as your daughter's mother, if you wish it too." Don felt a lump rise in his throat. For so long he had feared change, feared judgment, and feared that happiness might not be possible again. Yet here it was, standing before him, offered freely and embraced by the girls he loved more than anything in the world. He nodded slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle in his heart. "Then we are a family," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. A family chosen by the heart. The days that followed were filled with a deeper sense of unity and harmony. The girls reveled in the simple pleasures of life on the ranch, riding horses, gathering eggs, picking fruit, and helping Nokomis with her garden. John worked alongside them, learning more from Nokomis each day, and feeling a renewed sense of purpose and joy. Even the animals seemed to respond to the calm and love that now filled the ranch, moving with ease and comfort as if they sensed the harmony around them. The community, once skeptical and curious, began to fully accept the changes at the Whitaker Ranch. Neighbors came to visit, seeking advice or simply sharing stories. They admired the growth of Emily and Sarah, who were now confident, knowledgeable, and kind-hearted young girls. They respected John for his courage and openness, and they appreciated Nokomis for her wisdom, her patience, and the way she had nurtured the family. Slowly the whispers faded, replaced by admiration and acceptance. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple, the family gathered around the fire pit. Emily and Sarah snuggled close to Nokomis, listening intently as she shared a story of her ancestors, of bravery, wisdom, and the importance of family. John sat nearby, his hands resting on his knees, watching the fire dance and listening to the soft crackle of the flames. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, from the quiet days of grief and routine to the laughter, learning, and love that now filled the ranch. He remembered the moment when his daughters had spoken their wish, his fear and hesitation, and the gradual transformation that had followed. He realized that family was not just what one was born into, but what one nurtured with love, patience, and care. Emily, inspired by Nokomis's stories, looked up at her father.
Papa, she asked, do you think we could always stay like this, all of us together, happy?
John smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had not known in years. He looked at Nokomis, who returned his gaze with a gentle nod, and then at the girls, who were radiant with hope and joy. "Yes, my loves," he said. "We can always stay together. This is our family, and we will grow and face the future together, no matter what comes our way." Sarah reached out and took Nokomis's hand, her eyes bright. "I'm so glad you're our mom," she said simply, her voice filled with sincerity. Nokomis's eyes glistened as she squeezed the girl's hand. "And I am so glad to have you both as my daughters," she replied softly. As the night deepened, the stars twinkled above the ranch, and the cool breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and earth. The fire crackled softly, and the family sat together, a living testament to love, patience, and the extraordinary bonds that could be formed when hearts were open. John realized that he had found not only a new beginning but also a legacy, a family built not just on tradition, but on courage, understanding, and the choice to embrace love wherever it was found.
Years passed, and the Whitaker Ranch continued to thrive.
Emily and Sarah grew into strong, confident young women shaped by the lessons Nokomis had taught them, and by the love and guidance of their father. John continued to work the land, now with a sense of purpose and fulfillment that had been absent for far too long. Nokomis remained at the center of their lives, guiding, teaching, and nurturing, her presence a constant source of strength and love. The story of the Whitaker family became known in the community not for gossip or judgment, but as an example of courage, acceptance, and the extraordinary power of love. People admired the way the family had grown together, respecting traditions while embracing change and finding joy in the simple everyday moments of life. And so the Whitaker Ranch, once a quiet place of routine and solitude, became a home full of laughter, learning, and love. Nokomis, chosen by the daughters' hearts and embraced by John's, became the mother they had wished for, the guide they needed, and the heart of a family that had learned the true meaning of happiness. In the end, John understood a truth he had long overlooked. Family is not only born from blood, but from the courage to choose love, the patience to nurture it, and the willingness to embrace life's unexpected blessings. Together they faced the future with hope, joy, and the unshakable certainty that love, trust, and care could create a home where hearts were free, and family was a choice made by the heart.
The Whitaker Ranch was more than land and animals.
It was a place where hearts met, differences were respected, and love was cultivated with care every single day. And in that harmony, the family found something more precious than anything else in the world: true happiness.